Welcome to 33 Fuel podcast. My name is Erika and one of the co-founders of 33 Fuel. Today on the show we have Sharon Gayter, multi-world record breaker. If you're into endurance performance and world-breaking records, you might recognize her name. She has just broken a new world record. She traveled by foot between Joseph Groats and Land's End. So it's 822 miles in just over 12 days. If you're looking to raise your performance or if you're trying to break a world record, this conversation with Sharon Gayter is gold. Sharing conversation like this one and helping you to raise your performance with 33 Fuel natural sport nutrition products is our mission. So check us out at 33fuel.com. But in the meantime, let's listen to Sharon Gayter. Welcome to Sharon Gayter. Congratulations, you have smashed the women's world record for running from Joseph Groats to Land's End. So it's incredible.
Thank you.
So I have tons of questions for you. First of all, I just wanted to know, how do you set your goals?
Oh, that's a difficult one, but it's quite a long answer. Yeah, I broke the world record back in 2006, and I dreamt about that record for 12 years, and I wrote it down in an assignment many, many years ago. I was at university, and that's where I learned about goal setting. And I always remember I was an ultra-distance runner back then, and I just got my first international vest. And I had to write a long-term goal. What is the biggest thing you'd ever like to achieve? And I said, well, every year somebody will become a world champion, but how many people break a world record? So I set that as my goal, to break a world record. And being British, I wrote down, I want to break the record running from Land's End to John O'Groats. I didn't know how far it was. I didn't know who held it, but I wrote it down in an assignment when I was doing my degree at Teesside University. And it took me 12 years to actually achieve that goal. Once I'd done it, it was okay. I never want to do that again, but I know how to do it better. But as time passes by, you forget how painful it is. And 13 years later, I thought, well, I do want to have one last crack at this and do it the other way around. Instead of Land's End, John O'Groats, do it John O'Groats to Land's End. I'm getting on a bit now, and I'm past my sell-by date in terms of my best performances, but I still felt capable of breaking the world record. And I thought, while I'm still capable, I want to attempt it. And so that is why I actually did this, and that's why I set the goal. And at the age of 55, tried to break the world record going the other way.
It's outstanding. It's like incredible. Just thinking about that, you put yourself in the same kind of journey again, and that is actually kind of unusual in a way. This is interesting. This means that your focus and you're willing to win and willing to achieve. It was so much deep in your mind because there were so many years.
Oh, yeah. A long time between the two, and you do kind of forget that. But I learned so much in those years. When I did it first time round, I think I was very naive. Although I was an ultra-distance runner, I'd never really run much further than 140 miles. So to suddenly run 840 miles was a massive achievement back then. But I've learned so much in the meantime that I now know how to have done it better. If I'd known now what I'd have done back in 2006, I probably could have done it much, much better back then. But you just learn from experience. So now I've got the experience, but not quite the fitness as that I had years ago, but still fit enough to break the record.
I bet that your mind probably is stronger than your body in a way.
I think it probably is. And that's why I say even though I'm 55, I don't feel 55 because my mind is still much younger. And that's why I probably do these things, because I just forget that my body is 55. I mean, I do less mileage than I used to, but it's still quite high mileage for the age I am. But,
I mean, for any age, it just shows you the age is really just a number. It's up to us. Yeah. So you were telling me that also to prepare this amazing achievement, you did a simulation on the treadmill. Is that right?
Well, the treadmill race was a few years ago. That was 7 days on a treadmill. And what we did with that was, it was the first race that I'd done on a treadmill. And the whole idea is, because I'm a sports scientist and I do work at a university where there's a sports science department, the whole idea is when you go through these things, nobody knows what happens to your body. So the whole idea was to run on a treadmill so they could carry out all the testing on my body while I was doing a world record attempt. So we went for 7 days on a treadmill. And I knew the women's record was just over 400 miles, and I knew I was well capable of going further than that. So we actually targeted the men's world record, which was about 450 miles. So I didn't set a small goal. I said right from the start, I'm going out here to break the men's world record. And it's very rare that a woman breaks a male record in athletics, but that was my goal, and that's what I set out to do. So we had a plan in place. And it was when I was practicing this 3 hours on, 20, 30 minutes off, 3 hours sleep a night. But we had to look at the testing we was going to do, and it couldn't really interfere too much with the world record itself. But if I had a blood test done every time I had a break, then that would make life easier for gathering the data. So we had 4 lots of blood taken every time I stopped and got off the treadmill after 3 hours. We took 4 lots of blood. So we was looking at blood glucose, hematocrit, hemoglobin, and blood lactate. On top of that, we was measuring everything that I ate, was measuring my weight, and at the end of every 3 hour block, towards the end of it, we was actually doing a gas analysis to see, what your oxygen consumption was, what your carbon dioxide production was, so you could actually calculate what fuel you were burning and how efficient you were. So we did this every single 3 hours throughout the whole race, and obviously all that data was collected. It's actually just about to be published. It's been written up with comparison to another world record that I've done with 10 marathons in 10 days, and they're comparing the two world records and the data that I've collected from both of those. And what is very evident, I mean, you do lose weight during these things, and I lost quite a bit of weight during that one. And what was really, I knew this happened, but I didn't realise the scale of what it happened. But what we did learn is the amount of iron that you use and you actually lose during a race. And for 7 days, I went from a level of 14.5, which is perfectly normal for a female, to 9, which is positively anemic, in 7 days. Because every time you hit the deck, you're killing red blood cells, and you cannot replace them as quick as what you lose them. So although I knew I would lose red blood cells, I just didn't realise the dramatic scale of how much you lose in 7 days. And that was quite horrific. And I know full well that 12 days of running, I wouldn't have replaced them. And I know full well I'll probably be anemic right now. But, there's no point going to the doctors. There's nothing they could do. OK, they just turn around and tell me I'm anemic and to eat a few more bits of iron. So I'm doing that anyway. But what we did carry on to do was once we finished that 7 days on a treadmill, I carried on taking the blood test on myself afterwards to see how long it took my iron levels to recover to a normal level. And it only took 2 weeks, so it wasn't so bad. So I know that within sort of 2-3 weeks after this, my iron levels would probably return to normal again. And so we learned that. Yep. And the other thing we learned was that I'm incredibly efficient, which I kind of think we would have known that anyway. So, so that is all we really learned. Hemoglobin, hematocrit went down. Blood lactate stayed very, very stable. Everyone says at the end of a race, oh, you must have so much lactate in your system. I had no lactate in my system because I was burning it as quick as I was producing it. And because it's such a slow pace, there was no lactate in my system. It was always remaining below sort of 1, the level of 1. Very rare went above that. And blood glucose, again, when you're talking about food and trying to eat, my blood glucose levels were stable throughout the whole event. So even though I lost weight, my blood glucose levels were stable because I was constantly eating. So that's what we learned from that.
That's very interesting, actually. Very, very interesting and very also useful, and also good to know about the anemic. Actually, you were able in only, you said 2 weeks to recover?
Yeah.
And that's incredible. So how did you recover? I mean, you were changing your diet, helping out the iron level with some supplement, or with just, how you did it?
No, I did use supplements. Even during the event, I used supplements. I used Vitabiotics supplements called ferroglobin. And it's a supplement I've used for many, many years. So I do use supplements. And, again, I've done diet analysis. And I did a diet analysis of the complete ultra distance squad at one time, 30 athletes. And it was quite informative in how many people did lack iron in their diets. Most people managed to get the carbohydrates there, but to get all the individual nutrients there, very few actually done it. I think only 2 of the 30 athletes managed to get all of the nutrients as well as, the amounts of carbohydrate and protein they needed. So it's quite interesting doing that diet analysis, and myself included. I was always very low on iron, even on a general daily basis. I do eat meat, but I don't eat a lot of red meat. But it's trying to supplement the diet with things like lentils and other things that are very high in iron to replace that.
That's awesome. And about the sleep deprivation, because of course in this specific challenge must be quite a lot, as you said at the very beginning. In any case, the ultra runner, they experience quite a lot of the sleep deprivation. How do you manage to settle back in the right time of sleeping? How long does it take? And what do you do?
Well, you're quite right on that. I mean, the first night you're so tired and you think you'll sleep. Somebody said, will you sleep for 48 hours now? And I knew what the answer would be, and I knew full well that I wouldn't. And the day I finished at 6:30 in the evening. I was tired, so we spent an hour at Land's End, at which point the crew decided they wanted to watch the sun go down at Land's End. I said, I'm just so tired, I want to go to sleep. So we went to a campsite, which was about 5 miles away at St Just, and I still sat there in my stinky clothes that I haven't showered for 9 days. And you think the first thing I want to do is shower, because I was desperate for a shower. But by the time I got to the campsite at 8:30, I was just so tired. I didn't even bother shower. I didn't even bother getting out my kit. And I said, just get the bed ready. I'm going to sleep. And I went to sleep in my smelly kit, having still not showered for 9 days. And then I woke up. So I went to bed at 8:30 that night. And I woke up at 2:30 in the morning, wide awake, 6 hours sleep. And now everybody's sleeping around me. And I'm fidgeting, and I'm hungry. So in the end, I got up and I raided the fridge for some food. Bill didn't even stir. My husband, who was sleeping in bed, just didn't even stir. So I got up, ate some food. I had nothing more to do. It's pitch black outside. So I laid back down in the bed. And I managed to sleep for another 3 hours till about 6 o'clock in the morning, at which point I was tossing and turning. And I thought, God, I stink. I've got to get up and have a shower now. and because it was the last day, rather than being very organised, Bill had just dumped stuff everywhere. So I got up, and whereas my bag was always on top, my bag was right at the bottom, wasn't it? His bag was on top. So I had to, I want to shower, but how can I find some clean clothes? And I managed to put my arm down, and I pulled out a shirt, and I thought, well, I've got a shirt. I found a towel that was hanging out to dry, and I found my wash kit. Well, I thought that's all I need. So I put my trainers on. I couldn't even find my sandals or my flip-flops, so all I had to do was put my trainers on. I had a towel wrapped around my bottom half and a T-shirt on the top half. And I had to stagger across. He couldn't have parked further away from the shower block if I'd have asked him to. And it took me ages to get out and hobble across to the shower. I had the quickest shower ever because it was so sore to stand on my feet. I hobbled back again, at which point one of the crew saw me and took a photograph of me with my towel wrapped around me in my T-shirt. They promptly went back to bed again. I climbed in the van at 7:30, and all I had was a wet towel around me and a T-shirt, and I had to wait there till the crew woke up. Bill actually managed to wake up about 8:30, and then the rest of the crew got up about 10:30. But that was typical, like you say, how much do you sleep? I just didn't sleep. And it's probably, last night was probably the first night that I actually slept all the way through the night without waking up. And it's been like that story. Every time you get to sort of 8:30, you're really tired. You sleep, but you only sleep for a few hours, and then early hours of the morning, you're wide awake again. And that's what it's been like all the way through. I remember last time when the first night I went to sleep after the event, when I did it the other way round, I went to sleep and I woke up with a shock thinking, you've forgotten to get me up. I should be out running. And then I realised I'd finished. So I didn't have that this time, but I certainly did wake up, and it's taken me a full week to actually get back to sleeping properly again. But yeah, so last night was probably the first night.
Good. I'm glad about that. But I have to say, did you have any kind of a strange experience with your mind, like lack of focusing, or maybe forgetting things, or tricks your mind because you're so tired and it's trying, to go back and function normally? But have you experienced something?
Yeah, I'm incredibly forgetful at the moment, and I can't remember things for the life of me. And when I had to go to work at 9 o'clock in the morning, I was absolutely dreading it because I knew I wouldn't be able to focus, wouldn't be able to concentrate, and I'd forget everything that I was told. So I did know that. And it's even now, I'm improving now. I'm a week gone by and I'm improving, but I keep writing things down because I know I keep forgetting things. And I've got a checklist on the wall that if I have to do something, luckily my diary's written for you to come in here today. So but my diary's coming in very handy. But all the silly little things you have to do, I keep forgetting them. And even now, I haven't quite got that concentration back yet. I still,
Takes time.
sort of, it'd take another week or 2 weeks before I think my head has completely returned to normal.
And for your physical recovery, what do you do? Because of course your muscle, everything is like, how you do your best way how to recover is like a cold bath, or which are your strategies?
Yeah, I don't tend to do a lot of cold baths because I get very cold very quickly. And once you've done the event, I'm not desperate to recover as quick as I possibly can to get out there training again. is a very different scenario. And I've learned from previous times when I have done that, if you get out too quickly, the body breaks down again. So again, being a little bit older now, a little bit wiser now, a little bit more experienced, I'm having 6 weeks where I will go running. I have already run. I ran on Saturday. I did a park run on Saturday. So I am jogging very slowly, let's just say. But because my feet are tender, they need another few weeks to recover. And again, the bones will have taken an awful lot of stress in this. And although I don't have any injuries in terms of stress fractures, anything like that, if you was to go and do something very suddenly, very strenuous, your bones will be slightly weakened because of what you've done. So taking 6 weeks of very easy running, just doing what I want, no more than 5-6 miles maximum, nothing strenuous, a lot of biking as opposed to running to take the impact off the feet and the legs. So I've lost a lot of muscle tone, like from my quads, my muscles, I've had quite a few massages and the muscles just disappear. The muscles I did have beforehand in my quads have just disappeared. The body eats into that. When you lose weight, it eats into your muscles. So there's a lot of muscle tone that I have to build up again. And just by doing that gently on a bike, sort of trying to build the muscles up again, is what I need to do. So that's where my recovery, and eating healthily again, rather than just eating for the sake of eating whatever gets chucked in front of me.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, basically, because you would imagine, okay, the best recovery is to recover and not doing anything, basically just lie. Instead, actually, you are active, you are running and you are cycling.
Yeah.
Do you do also weights?
I do. Obviously not right now, but I do weights twice a week in terms of strength conditioning. And I actually do quite heavy weights. You think you do endurance weights. I don't do endurance weights. I actually do lift quite a good percentage of my body weight. So I do small repetitions of quite heavy weights just to keep the muscles in balance. And I feel that does work. It really does work. But yeah, and I knocked that on the head about 2 weeks before I'd actually did the race, to let the body recover from the weight training as well.
That's very interesting. So do you have already in mind the next challenge?
Well, I have 2 challenges that are possibly lined up. I think the next one will be the 1,000,000 meters on a treadmill. Again, because it's very easy to organise. It's a stationary event. It's much harder to organise what I've just done. Yeah. And because the crew were quite keen, I don't know why, but the crew were so eager to go and do another one. They said they've had the best holiday they've ever had by crewing me. And they've had such an adventure. Like, I'm feeling really guilty because they must have been just as sleep deprived as me. But that's what kind of a crew I had, that they're just so itching to go and do another one. I thought it was the best trip they've ever had, but I don't think I'd have liked to have been the other side of me. But so we're looking at possibly doing 1,000,000 meters on a treadmill.
Wow.
And again, it's nice to promote it in the local area because they've given me a lot of support for this, and it's nice to give that back to them, and like they can come and see me and support me in that. And I've got another challenge called the Northern 500. It's again in the top of Scotland, around Inverness. It starts at Inverness. It's a 500-mile route. And it's quite a remote part of Scotland. It goes around nice, quiet roads. And it was made quite famous by Mark Beaumont, who was the guy that cycled around the world and broke the world record. And he cycled this, and it's very popular with cyclists and campervans. And it's become quite prominent. And this year was the first year that somebody actually ran it. So as opposed to cycling it, William Sitchell ran it. And I know the time that William Sitchell done. And I looked at my time when I did joggle. And I was, I don't know, a day and a half, 2 days ahead of where he was when he did 500 miles. So I thought, well, I could actually break the men's record by running that. So that's kind of another secondary challenge. But it's not a world record. It's just like they call it an FKT in American terms, the fastest known time, or a course record is what I would know it as. But they don't do it as a world record because it's not one of those things they list. So I could get the fastest known time or course record for doing the Northern 500. So that'd be a nice challenge. So those are the next 2 challenges. That's enough for now, I think.
Oh, that's amazing. Especially, I think the treadmill is kind of interesting because there are so many hours on the same place. So there would be a lot of mental preparation also, because otherwise, how you can keep a focus on that? Yeah,
well, you do. When you do Land's End, John O'Groats Land's End, you kind of think that, okay, it's hard work because it's uphills, downhills, treading over curbs, map reading. If you take all those things out of the equation, all you have to do is run. And because I have that mindset that when I'm focused, it doesn't matter where I'm running, quite honestly, and so I can run on a treadmill. I hate training on a treadmill because I just really struggle to train on one. But when you actually go for a world record, you're in that focus again, and it doesn't matter where you are. Okay, it's incredibly repetitive because you don't have that change in stride. You don't have to go uphill, downhill. It's flat all the time. But you don't have any distractions. You don't have anything that gets in the way. So you don't have to keep putting on Garmin's to measure everything. You don't have to put on trackers. You don't have to keep changing kit because it's chucking it down with rain, and now it's the hottest day of the year, and now you're wading through puddles, so you don't get wet feet for 3 days and get trench foot like I did on joggle. So you have all these things that makes the running so much easier, and all your food can be ready in an instant. They don't have to like plan, well, how long is it going to take you before you do your next block, and all the food can be done instantly. So it's so much easier just to run and not have to all the distractions that do happen on a road event. So it does make life very, very easy, and you can actually, I think, even though it's very repetitive, you can actually do good performances on it. And because I've done one on the treadmill, or one big one on the treadmill, again, having done that, I know how to do it better. So you learn those things.
That's incredible. If you have to give us some advice to our audience, which were the key points that you say, oh, I wish I knew that the first time?
I think what I learned more about is so individual. It's not as though it's advice you can give to everyone, because not everyone's going to go and run 822 miles and try for a world record. My lessons I learned were probably more about the strategy of sleep deprivation and how much sleep I could have or couldn't have. And I didn't have much time to practice that before I did it previous. Whereas this time I'd done quite a few 6-day races and completely practiced the strategy I was going to use. But even though I've practiced that strategy of 6 days, you can't practice a strategy for 12 days because that's how long it takes. It's not like a marathon, you can go and do it again. You only get one chance to do it, and you've got to get everything right when you do it. So I knew everything would go like clockwork for 6 days, and it did go like clockwork for 6 days. But it was after 6 days that things kind of, sleep deprivation really caught up with me, and a few other issues slowed me down. But I had so many hours to play with by that stage that I still knew the record would help. The record would go. But it's learning how much sleep is enough sleep for you. And okay, 3 hours is enough for 6 days, but it was into the unknown after 6 days. And 3 hours obviously wasn't enough, but my body kind of rebelled when it had got enough. It said, right, I'm sleeping now. And that was it. I went to sleep on the grass verge.
I mean, that makes sense. You told me you created like a structure for your race, and it was divided in blocks. Tell me more about it, because it's so fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's, again, it's individual to the person, and you've got to learn what works for your body. When I did it last time, I did it in 4-hour blocks, and I had an hour's break. So I did 16 hours running a day with an hour's break between them. And okay, that's where I kind of really didn't need that hour's break. But once you start off with an hour's break, you can't suddenly go to half an hour, because it's your body can't adapt that way. But if you start off with what you mean to go on with, so I think over the years between then and now, I've practiced this in 6-day races where I went for 3.5 hours with a half an hour break, and it still didn't quite fit with me. And then when I went down to 3 hours with a half an hour break, that kind of suited me so much better. I didn't go into that real fatigue. After 3 hours running, that's a very short run for an ultra distance runner. So you've still got plenty left in you when you come in for your break. And the whole idea was to get more food inside me, because I'm terrible at eating when I'm running. The two just don't go together. So by running in 6 blocks of 3 hours a day, at the end of every 3-hour block, I could get a bowl of food inside me. Whereas before I was only having 4 bowls of food. Now I was having 6 bowls of food. So it made a big difference in how much I ate. So the whole idea of the structure was, one, to rest myself so that I could keep going, and the other was to get the food inside me to keep going. And after 18 hours of running and the breaks, you had just 3 hours left for sleeping.
More or less, you were able to smash all your goals. That sounds superhuman.
I think I've been very lucky over the years. I mean, I'm a sports scientist, and years ago, when I very first became an ultra distance runner, there were no ultra distance coaches around. So I actually went to university so that I could understand my own body and train myself. So I've been a self-coached athlete all these years. And I think that's to my advantage, because I understand my body better than any coach could. And I've always listened to my body, know how it works, know how it adapts to training. And, I've always had a crew that have written down everything, what I've done, every time I've had a break, every time I've eaten something food. You can analyse that to see what could you do better, how could you eat more food, how could you pace yourself better. So I've been very lucky that, through my own experiences and my own education, that I've been a self-taught athlete. And I think because of that helped me achieve all my goals. And then they went more extreme in terms of different weather conditions, different environments. So those were new challenges, not just running a bog standard 24-hour race wherever that was in the world. And I've been very lucky to have competed in some amazing places in the world.
Because you started ultra running a while ago, and when actually ultrarunning was not so as popular as now.
Yeah, when I first began ultras, there was very few runners full stop. Like for me to go out running, I got all the calls when you go out on the roads, like a female shouldn't be going out running. And that was 30 odd years ago. And in terms of ultra distance running, there was only really one race in Great Britain that I could do, a 24-hour race and 100k race. And to compete any more than that, you had to go abroad to actually do the races. There just wasn't ultra distance races in this country. So for the first 10, 15 years, all I could do was compete in the international ultras at 100k in 24 hours. 24 hours, actually at the time, only had a European Championships. And it was while I was actually an international athlete that they upgraded to being a World Championships. So when it became a World Championships, we did actually see a big increase in females taking part in the race. And people actually jumped over from the 100k to the 24 hours, and 24 hours became a more popular event than the 100k. Because when I began in 1994, 100k was the most popular race, and 24 hours really was a sideline. And now it's taken over that I think the 24 hours is such a big challenge for anyone. It has become a more popular race. And in the last 10 years or so, the proliferation of races, ultra distance races in this country, everyone assumes because you're an ultra distance runner, oh, you must have done this race. Now, if you'd have said that 15 years ago, I'd done just about every ultra distance race in the country. But now, because they've proliferated so much, I haven't even heard of half these races that they do. And I tried to pick one big race a year, which I couldn't years ago, because I was always, when I'm competing for internationals, you're restricted as to what you can do outside of taking part for Great Britain. So my schedule was very restricted. And once I've finished running for Great Britain, then I've got more chance to compete in some of the amazing races that I have done. And there are such spectacular places, like that I've been. And I try to pick one a year and go and run whatever that race is, And I've just been so lucky to do things, like the Grand to Grand, running through the Grand Canyon, and Libyan Desert and ocean floor race, and running in the Himalayas, the longest race they have there, where the Indian Army said it couldn't be done, and one man proved it could, and then I obliterated his record by about 11 hours. And yeah, it's been, the proliferation has been amazing. There's still very few 24-hour races and 100k races. The ultra distance races tend to be more challenging races of like along the trails, which I actually prefer the trails to road running anyway. But they do provide a bit more of a challenge than just running along tarmac all the time, and much more enjoyable.
So how do you keep motivated? How do you find inspiration? Consider it's also the different of level of fitness that goes over the years.
Yeah, I keep thinking that I still have goals that I want to do, but I keep thinking because I'm getting on a bit, I can't achieve them. But I think I've just proved that you really can achieve them. And every time I go into a race, I have to accept, okay, I'm not as young as I used to be. I'm not as fit as I used to be. I probably won't win it. So you have to go in with doing my best as opposed to a goal of winning it or coming home with the trophy. And 9 times out of 10, I still do come home with that first place. So I still have the goals, but they're not probably as high as what they used to be in terms of, okay, I'm going there, I want to win it. I go there with the attitude, right, I'm going there to do my best. And I have a goal of like what I expect my time to be and what I expect my performance to be. And it's out of my hands if somebody better than me beats me. But I still have my own individual goals, and that's the only way I can do it. And if that's good enough to win it, then it is. And if it's not, then I still can achieve goals, but your goals are slightly lower than what they used to be.
So makes me laugh because you just think about. I just think about it when you say, "I just wanted to do the race." I mean, you just keep winning things. You never disappoint anyone. You have this kind of interesting self-awareness that not everyone they have it. So you like to run alone.
Yeah, I think, even when I used to do internationals, there used to be so many different language barriers there. Obviously, I speak English and I only speak English. So when you went to international races, you couldn't suddenly hold a conversation with people because there was a language barrier. But I know when my own teammates used to talk to me, it was a case of, okay, I'm focusing. All of a sudden they'd talk to me and it was a distraction. It stopped me focusing on, oh God, how much time did that take to do that lap? And I kind of didn't like it because it took me away from the focus of what I was doing. So I learned very early on that I can have a small conversation, but I can't have a big conversation. And it has to be a very light-hearted conversation, oh, and what training have you done? And what do you do? And no, I don't want to know that during the race. That's for afterwards. But during the race, I just want to focus. And okay, I think it's going to rain. That's about as much as the conversation I'd like to hold. And I know when I did the joggle, previous people that have attempted it in the last year, you know, Dan Lawson and I think James Williams both attempted this, and they were appealing for runners to come and run with them. And I was completely opposite. I actually had to put a comment on my website. Please do come and support me, sign the witness statement, but I actually don't talk a lot when I run, you know, and I don't. It's the way I focus, the way I concentrate. And it's like people say, do you listen to music when you run? I don't, because it's like a bee buzzing in my ear. And again, it's a distraction. And I think on something like joggle, you really have to have your be focused because you're on busy roads at times and you have to be aware of the traffic. You have to be aware of where you're going. You have to concentrate on the maps, remember where you're going, read the maps to see where you're going. So you have to keep your focus there at all times. And having someone with me, if I'm just suddenly chatting to someone, I'd forget to look at the maps and all of a sudden I've gone off route or something. So I don't talk when I run, and I've always known that. And I like, you know, nearly all my training's done on my own. And I actually like it that way. You know, I don't mind racing with other people, but I actually like to do my training on my own, and I don't need people around me to do that with me.
Yeah, so it's kind of really interesting because you're doing two kind of journey. One journey is physical journey that it takes you to the end of the race, but the other journey must be a huge journey, mental, because you don't want a distraction. So you are focusing, keep focusing inside your mind all the time. So how is this journey?
Which is my journey?
Mental journey. So
yeah. You prepare for this. When you're going to go for 12 days, you don't just think about it the day before. You've been thinking about it and all the preparation up to it. You know, you go to bed at night and you're thinking about what your journey is going to do, how you're going to be feeling, how you're going to be focusing on that and concentrating on that. And, you know, you go to bed every night with that visualization. So when it actually comes to reality and you actually do the event, it actually feels like clockwork. It hasn't, you know, it was hard work. It was every time the alarm went off and you had to get out again. It was hard, but, you know, there's no point moaning at people. You know, I'm the one that wants to do this, so I'm the one that's putting them through it. So you don't complain and you just get on with the job. And that was part of me saying that, okay, I won't complain if I'm hurting. I won't complain if my feet are sore, because those things are going to happen. So you just focus on what you have to do to actually get to the end of the race. And that's, you know, you go into it with that focus, and it kind of goes in a flash in some ways, although it's 12 days, you know, it's just Groundhog Day every day, but you really just stay in that little zone all the time until you get to the finish line.
So what do you do? Do you do the famous check-in, like check-in, okay, am I thirsty, am I hungry? Do you find the ways, your mental journey to help your physical effort?
Yeah, I do. Every time I get out to go for the run, it's a case of, okay, I had a checklist written on the wall to make sure I had everything with me, because I was worried that I'm going to forget to start the Garmin, or I'm going to forget to do something, or I'm going to forget to take this with me and forget to put the tracker on. So I had this checklist stuck on the wall in the van. So every time I went out, I went through the checklist, right, got all those things. Then I'd get out the van, right, okay, you've got to run. And I just do a body check. Okay, you got a little sore spot there, a little niggle there, but that's okay, you can run on those. And then you start running. And then when you're running, you think, well, have I had enough to drink? Is it a hot day? Yeah, probably should be drinking a bit more. And then halfway through the block, you kind of think, okay, that's an hour and a half done. Right, need to eat something. Where's the flapjack? Where's more drink? Have I drunk enough? And again, continuously doing that, like doing a body check. And again, just before you come into the checkpoint to have another break, you just do the quick body check again. Right, okay, I'm in need of food now. Yep, I'm going to change my socks and shoes. Yep, everything's feeling good. I'm good to go. And then you stop, have your break, and then you do it all again. And it's just like Groundhog Day for every 3-hour block, 6 times a day for 12 days. I actually packed every single pair of socks that I own, and it still wasn't enough to do 6 blocks a day for 12 and a half days. But luckily, I had a friend at the Pentlands near Edinburgh, which is 4 days in. And he actually was going to run across the Pentlands with me. And he says, by the way, if you want any washing doing, I'm quite happy to do it and bring it back to you the next day. Oh, well, that would be very, very useful, Murdo. And I told him I would definitely be doing that. And he did, right on cue. He came, he collected all my washing. And, you know, he even paired up all my socks. Because, you know, when you have left and right socks and you have several pairs the same colour, he actually knew to pair up my left and right socks. It happened once before where people didn't realise that and put 2 right socks together and the left socks together. But this time he actually paired all my socks up. And so it just meant that I could have a clean pair of socks for every single block of running that I did. And clean shorts every single day. I had 8 pairs of shorts that I had, you know, to take with me. And again, I'd have to wear some for a couple of days, but I didn't. I had clean shorts every single day. So
yeah,
that was good to have.
Luxury.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which are the other things that actually can help an ultra runner?
Well, we had to be very, very organised. We were in a tiny little camper van. We had the smallest camper van at the lot, which was unfortunate, but it was our camper van, and a van that I sleep in that many times, so there's no point in getting another one. But because you have so much kit, you got a bag full of kit, you got a bag full of equipment, you got bags full of food, shoes, socks, everything else, and you have to be highly organised so that when you come in for a break, everything is organised so that you know exactly where it is. It's not as though you sit there, oh, I now need a clean pair of socks. Where have you put them? So the clean bag of socks was always put right next to me because he knew every single time I'd need a clean pair of socks. The food that I wanted was always prepared. So it wasn't a case of like, okay, now you're in, let me prepare the food. He knew I was coming in. He prepared the food in advance. And the other thing, he called me Goldilocks. This is my husband. He calls me Goldilocks. That's too hot. That's too cold. That's too soft. That's too crunchy. So my poor husband, I don't know how we've been married for 27 years, but he gets used to me. So if he makes a cup of tea and it's too hot, I've got some water in to put it in case it's too hot. And but that's the thing. If he makes a burning hot meal and I've only got a short amount of time to eat it, I sit down. I can't eat that. It's too hot. I need for it to cool down. So he has to cook it in advance, preempt when I'm going to come in, cook it in advance and let it cool down somewhat so I can actually eat it at a temperature that is edible to eat. If it's burning hot, you just can't eat it in the time frame. It takes too long to eat. So being prepared, and being organised to come in for a checkpoint. If you're having a checkpoint, you don't want to waste time getting this out, getting that out, taking ages to eat a hot meal. So being organised and like planning ahead to say what temperature do you want it to come in at, and how do you want things, and having everything at your fingertips so you haven't got to keep reaching across to get things. So when you have a break, you have a decent break, everything's at your fingertips, and then go again. And having a checklist written on the wall for me was actually quite important because I had to really remember the Garmin watch because of like the world record and everything else that we was doing. So having that checklist, even if it's in a smaller ultra, what do I need to remember before I go out? Just looking at the checklist, going through it, right, I've got this, then you go again. So being organised and writing down simple things like checklists do help.
Yeah, that's very interesting. There are some ways how you pack things because, of course, you need also to keep everything light. Okay, in this case, it was such a long distance, and you had the van supporting the supporting team. It was just your husband supporting you, or someone else?
There was most of the time there was 3 support crew there, 3 vans, but only one van was actually mine. So all my kit was kept in my van, and the other crew were doing all the record, the log book for the world record purposes, some of the filming, some of the photograph taking, logging where I was at what time. And there's 3 of them that were sleeping in one of the other vans. And occasionally they would get out and cycle with me, as with my husband sometimes. He would cycle with me and somebody would drive my van. Then we had another crew, which was Eleanor and Dave. And Eleanor was only there to run with me. She didn't do any of the logbook or witness statements. She was just there really to support me. But she's a person that holds the world record for 1,000 miles. So who better could you ask for, And she was my idol. Before I came into ultra distance running, Eleanor was British #1. Unfortunately, I was the person that knocked her off her #1 spot, but she was in her 50s then, I might add, and I was only in my 30s. So there was no excuse, like even when she was 50, she was still beating me. It took me time to beat her. And I became #1 for 13 years. And we've stayed friends because we used to share rooms at internationals. And we've been friends for 30 years. So, okay, she's retired now, but it was just lovely to have her on board and have her sort of cycle with me. And she tells me so many stories. It's just wonderful. So I was just very fortunate to have someone like that with me too.
That's fantastic. Let's go back one step. When you started, the gears basically not nearly existing because now there are so many more sophisticated, materials. Before it was way more difficult.
Oh, it's amazing. The kit that you have nowadays, the shoes that you have nowadays, everything is so much more amazing. And because there's so many more people doing this, I think there's become a need for all the upmarket equipment. The equipment is expensive, but you only really have to buy it once because it does last quite well. And yeah, even when I did the Marathon des Sables, it was the equipment that I learned from my very first. I think my very first desert race was in Libyan Challenge, and I learned so much from that. I brought a few little bits of kit to go there, and it was actually by doing the event I learned so much about kit from other people because internet was only just coming into it then back, so you could share information. But I learned so much from other people actually doing those races. And then now, because you have internet, it's very easy to research and find the best kit for everything. But the key to those events is going as lightweight as you can. because every single pound you put on the back goes through your legs that you've got to carry. So keeping everything to a minimum. And I got that down to a really fine art now of like, you know, I can take all my food in my pack with my sleeping bag and everything for 7 days, and I would get that down to about 7-8 kilograms easily. And we always used to joke, because every time they used to weigh your pack, mine would be, I could guarantee you, one of the lightest. Not always the lightest, but one of the lightest. And I would take no extras, no luxury items, absolutely no luxury items. It was just only the essentials and the bare essentials at that. You know, I wouldn't even have a sleeping mat because it was too heavy to carry.
So now they do it so thin and light that
you can. But they never
uh,
used to be. Yeah.
So my God, it's incredible your journey, because you really saw the sport, the ultra sport growing.
I'm very jealous. I wish I was. All these races were available 30 years ago, and all this equipment was available 30 years ago. But yeah, that's life, isn't it? So, but I can still enjoy these things, and I can now use the lightweight kit. But yeah,
it's such a pleasure to have you here at the podcast. I just like I feel that I'm very honored to have the opportunity to speak with you. So
thank you. That's very kind.
No, thanks so much for all your time, for what you have given to us, inspiration and tips. If people they wanted to find you on social media, where they can find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Facebook. My name is Sharon Gayter, and they can find me on Twitter, which my Twitter account is @sgayter, and Gayter is spelled Gayter. A lot of people like to put OR, but if you put ER, you might just find me.
Fantastic. So Sharon, thanks so much for your time. It was so beautiful to speak with you.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
There you go. That was the unbeatable and unstoppable Sharon Gayter. I hope this episode gave you a lot of value, as delivering value is what a 33 Fuel is about. Sharing great content like this one and this conversation we had with Sharon, and in store at 33fuel.com, where you can find 33 Fuel powerful sport nutrition, all natural and all tasty. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a good one.